What is up, family? You are listening to Living Beyond the Dream podcast, a podcast where we have practical conversations to take the dreams you have for your church and yourself and turn it into a reality. My name is Mike, joined by always by my man Tyler, and this week we are in episode 50. 50 strong. We are in it and here to talk about some stuff that some people need to just hear.
That's right.
We need to go there.
Yeah, we do.
We need to talk about it because you know what? You're going to have to survive it at some point if you're in a growing church.
Surviving a new building project.
Ooh, Lord. I don't know if I need to be talking about this or somebody be talking it to me, but we can survive these building projects.
That's right. Hey, you know what? The church is growing. God's church is growing. So, y'all are going to have to go through this. And we just want to give you some best practices on how to do it. Now, Mike, we are currently in the middle of one of these things. And my first question is...
We're a little bit farther than the middle of it.
You're right. We are.
If we are in the middle of it right now, I don't think I'll be a pastor 6 months from now.
We are in the finishing stretch. We're on the home stretch.
The finishing stretch.
Finishing stretch.
We are on the final stretch. About to finish this thing.
As you can see, it's not affecting us.
Not at all.
Yeah. But my first question, how did you know it was time to move out of your current facility?
Because the need was there. And what do I mean by that? It wasn't the need that we needed to grow to get into a new building. Because a lot of people think you're not going to grow unless I get this certain building. If I got that type of building. A lot of people use building as the excuse that they're not growing. And I love for them to come check out our place now. Because, man, you walk through our building, you will be utterly unimpressed with how horrible our building really is. We have no lobby. And when I mean we have no lobby, I mean we have absolutely no lobby. We have a hallway. Literally a hallway that is 7 feet wide that wraps around the entirety of our building. So our lobby is literally outside. And that would be great if we lived in California. No problem we lived in Florida. We live in Missouri, which means we get all 4 seasons in 1 week. It's cold. It's raining. It's hot and humid, which hot and stupid. Rarely do we have those peak perfect days, right? Those are the rare nice days. That's our lobby experience, which means we have a welcome center out in that lobby. We have baptisms out in that outdoor lobby. We have all our conversations and community out in that lobby. Yet we were still able to grow. We're still able to run 5 services. On special weekends, we run 6, 7, 8 services. Why? Because the building's not the excuse for growth. Now, it is the problem to put a cap on your growth. So when you get to a place where you stop growing because there's really no more prime spots left in your prime services. Because there's just a certain amount of people aren't going to go to a 2 o'clock Sunday service.
Would you say that is the litmus test right there?
That is the litmus test.
It's your prime services when they're capped out.
Yes. Now, you need to be running, to me, 4 to 5 services before you need to start thinking that you need a new building. Yeah. But once you start hitting those kind of services, and what I'm talking about, you have 3 pretty prime services in the morning, which is your 8:45 to 9 o'clock, your 10s, wrap around your 10 o'clocks, and you're close to noons, 11:45 to noon. Those are all 3 great services. Actually, we get some of our best attendance at the 11:45 services now. So those are all really great attendance. Then there's another service you can drop in, which we tend to get pretty good service at, is either a Saturday night or Sunday night service, right? But then beyond those 4, you're looking at some weird, wonky times. You start getting closer to 2 o'clock, and then you move into 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock. People are just not going to attend those services as frequently. So when you start filling up your 3 to 4 services and you're really running out of prime spots, guess what? You're going to stop growing because guests typically go to those prime spots, and you've kind of hit that ceiling. That's when you start needing to plan for your buildings. That's when you start looking at and going, I need to get out of this place. So don't think you need a new building to grow, but not having a new building can hinder your growth as you are growing because you're running out of prime slots.
Yeah,
That's really good. How did you, after you identified the need to, okay, we've got to get another building, or a new building, how did you know what kind of facility to purchase? Did you know build from the ground up, do an existing renovation?
That's not really it's not really a helpful question in the fact that every church is different.
Okay.
Because every city's different. Yeah. And some cities have more to offer than other cities, and some cities have, better placement than other cities. Of course, building from the ground up is the best because you get to build exactly like you want it to be, okay? But it's not always the cheapest, and it's not always in the best placement, right? Locations sometimes are hindered because you have to go on the outskirts of town to find good land to be able to put there, because if you're trying to get land on the inside of the city, so that's going to hinder you. For us, it was more cost-effective to remodel than it was to build from the ground up. We were able to get a bigger building in a better placement than we were building from the ground up, because based on bringing in all the kind of utilities you need to and doing the parking lot and getting all the groundwork, all of that stuff was going to cost us well above what we were able to do for a remodel. Now, building from the ground up would have gave us a lot more flexibility on our design and have a lot less uniqueness to the design we're doing now. However, it was more cost effective for us, and we're a 6-year-old church. When we purchased building 5-year-old church, those are all thoughts you think about when you're that old. And so it's one thing if you've been established for years and you've been preparing for things, but that's kind of what we were looking at on our end.
Yeah, and you identified some key attributes though to the building, like parking.
Yes.
It's got to be a big one. What are some other ones that you look at if you're going in for a renovation or something like that? What are like, okay, this has the bones or this doesn't have the bones? What do
you want to look at a couple of things. Number one, you want to look kind of where you're at currently. You don't want to go so far away from where you're currently at because you're going to lose people, right? So you don't want to lose people because you're going 15, 20, 30 minutes away from your current facility. So we are literally a quarter mile away from where we're currently at, if that. So we're not going to lose anything from that transition speaking. Secondly, you want to make sure parking and location's good. You want people to know where you are and how to get to where you're at and park where you need to. That's a big deal. Thirdly, you want to make sure there's enough kids facility space. Too many times we look at the auditorium space, we oogle and ogle about how many seats we can fit on adults, but we don't think about that from the kids side of it, right? And that's probably your most important. The number one growing churches in America have phenomenal kids programs because kids are a priority. Parents will go to a church they don't enjoy that their kids wake up every Sunday begging them to go to church. So they will sacrifice. But if they love a church but their kids hate it, they're not going to take them there for very much longer because kids are a priority. So you want to make sure you have enough space for kids and really build that out. I would rather have a smaller auditorium with more kids space than a larger auditorium with lack of kids facilities. And then you want to just look at the structural things. You're going into something like this. You want to make sure structurally it's a sound facility and building. There may be a lot of cosmetic things you need to change, but if the roof's bad, if the foundation's bad, those are all things that when you get in there with an architect and engineer, you're going to discover. And sometimes we as pastors, we're such visionary people, we'll just overlook all that stuff. It's a good deal. Just a God-given deal. It's a good deal for a reason sometimes. Sometimes it's a God-given deal, but sometimes when all you see glaring foundational issues and roof issues and all that, there's a reason, okay? So you just need to make sure you listen to the advice of people wiser than you that do this for a living.
Pay attention where the water goes when it rains.
That's right. That's a big deal.
So good. So once you find that building, how do you find the funding for the building?
That's a tough one, and I'll be honest with you. When you're a church, it's really difficult, especially when you're a church that is young as us, right? We acquired a building, and we did get our building in a miraculous way, which was phenomenal, and we were able to get it and actually possess the building for a year without any payments while we secured funding because the owners really wanted to make a deal with us, which was a phenomenal deal and setup, and God bless us with all that. But finding funding is not always easy. We had verbal commitments from banks, but this was before they went to their board. And we had verbal commitments from banks before they went to the board, and we passed every single stress test that they gave, basically saying you can afford it. Flying colors, you can afford the remodel on the building and all the prices. And we bet several banks this was the case. But traditional banks have a hard time lending to churches. And a couple reasons. One, you're donation based. So that's a difficult thing to stomach, whether or not you're always going to be able to have the same donors you have now. It's different if you're selling a product or things like that. Secondly, banks don't really want to evict churches. They don't really look good in the PR scheme to look at that. So we found a lot of kind of struggles with that at the beginning. So what we started looking into, which was a really blessing, is we started looking at lenders that solely focus on churches. And what was great about that is, one, they know all about the church build and remodels and all of this. That's what they do, 100%. Secondly, they've been doing it for 60 plus years. Several of them have. So they have a lot of long standing, just as much as many of the local banks you may try to deal with. And they've been doing multi-million-dollar projects. But third, they look at it with eyes that you're looking at it in. It's missional to them. It's not just business to them. And because it's missional to them, they have a lot more grace with you. They have a lot more prayer attached to it. They have a lot more conversations about the kingdom of God that goes with it. That's a great thing for a pastor. But also what I found is we get better interest rates. And who would have thought? It really is, because they're not in the traditional financing realm. So they get to be a little bit more flexible with their interest rate. So we're actually being able to have a lot more flexibility with the terms, a lot better interest rates and things of that nature. So we've actually had a far greater experience working with it with a non-traditional lender through the church lenders that we worked with than we ever were getting with all the banks. And we went through several banks at first, because when you're young, that's what you think. You're going to go through the banks. And we're not a denominational church, so we don't have the denomination to lean on. So that's what we did. And we were really blessed by that ability to step into there. And if you want to know who we use, they're not paying for us. This isn't a sponsored anything, but we use CDF, which is CDF Capital. That's their website. Phenomenal people out there. They've been great the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and it's easy for a pastor to get discouraged too, to think, you know what, hey, I'm gonna do the bank or the community a favor, so I'm gonna try and keep this in town and everything like that, but then get discouraged because you get turned down or something like that. But there are so many other options for funding out there. And then, you know, the idea of the partnership with a church, knowing that, like, you know, your partner in this is also kingdom minded.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've had financial conversations with CDF where we have literally started the conversation with a prayer, ended with a prayer. They've prayed over the church, they prayed over everything. And that's just incredible. Like,
It's so amazing.
something to have in your corner, again, just, you know, in another avenue. It's amazing. It's so great.
So phenomenal. And that, so, you know, of course they didn't pay or sponsor this, but if you're needing to reach out to some people, I've passed them on to my pastors. Now, CDF, if you hear this, you want to sponsor it. I mean, I'm joking, but you want to check them out. Some great people out there.
Yes. How did they, or how did you go about seeking out a general contractor? So you got the building, you got the funding, and now it's actually time to put some boots on the ground and start doing this thing. How important is the general contractor, and then how did you start that?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of look at this in two different realms, okay? So I'm going to back up just a step before we get into the general contractor. The very first thing you want to make sure you do is get the right architect on board. Your architect will make or break a project and will make or break whether or not you complete that project in budget or not. And I'm going to tell you right now, spend the money on a good architect because you'll save the money later on down. And I wish I would have looked at that a little bit better at the beginning stages. And so I'm going to encourage you to make sure you do that. And there's some phenomenal architects out there that work just in the church realm. And they're a lot, and you say, well, why are you focusing so much on the church realm? Because they know the way a church should function on a weekend experience. So they're going to look at it from the eyes of what's going to be conducive to you, not just the eyes of let me build a building, but what flows better for a church building, because that's all they do. Great people out at Equip Studios. I'm not personally using them now, but I will use them at every project. I know several pastors use them. I have a great connection with them. They're out in the I think North Carolina is where they're at. Equip Studios. Just worked on my pastor's church, the Oaks Church down in Dallas, or Waxahachie. Phenomenal job out there. Great people. But get a good architect up front. Then you want to bring in your GCs to start bidding out the projects based on the architect drawings. And if you have a right architect up front, They're going to help make sure they're aligning with the bids and being able to bid those out correctly. If you don't have that right architect up front, you're going to start getting some weird views on bids. You're going to start finding bids all over the map because the drawings aren't correct, or they're not clear enough, or there's not enough communication between both parties, and that's going to cause a lot of weird angst for you on trying to figure out, okay, is that right? Who's right? Should I go with the cheaper? Should I go with the more expensive? I don't know, because there's not clarity there. So you want to get that architect right, but then start getting the bids out. But that architect's going to have a good feel on who's communicating the right way, who's coming in close to those bids, and based on those histories. So you're going to want to look at those areas kind of almost as they're one. Right? You want to go into them as they're one. Architect and GC are going to work so hand in hand together, but you need to make sure you get that architect, probably most importantly, straight up front.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, and even walking through the process right now, having an architect that clearly understands how a church functions, like even down to the power. Like, does this room need its own circuit? We're walking through that right now. Does this room need its own clean power and all this kind of stuff? I mean, they will really be able to hone in on the specifics of how a church functions and doing that.
So again, that was Equip Studios. I'm personally not using them, so again, they're not paying me for this. But tell Sandy, Mike at Bloom Church sent you there if you ever reach out to them. He's a great guy, co-owner, phenomenal, and he used to be youth pastor at New Spring Church, so he knows churches and knows ministry. Phenomenal people. Bloom Church sent you. Boom. All right.
All right, so let's talk on the congregation side. You've started a project. How do you keep momentum as the project is going on? Because these can take some time. So how do you keep momentum and drive with your congregation?
Yeah. This is where I wasn't the best at the beginning. We've gotten better towards the end. And so you're learning from a lot of my pains. That's why we say surviving a building project. Because there was moments I didn't know if we'd survive it. I was not, I was way overly optimistic at beginning on completion time. And I was underly realistic. So when I say that is I came out the gate swinging, man. We got a building, guns blazing, everything's exciting.
Yeah.
Boom. Got tears flowing down people's cheeks, dropping in the drone shots of the building. Every band's coming in. It's amazing, powerful, wonderful. All that's great. But guess what? I still had to get everything squared away on all the business side of things, right? Because we were given the building at a very great rate and very great terms. But that didn't mean everything was squared away.
Yeah.
So I announced way too soon.
Yeah.
Dropped it way too soon. And then I was too vague. I don't want to say vague. I wasn't updating our church enough in the beginning during all this research process. So I dropped all this stuff. And then we go months and I'm not really talking about it much because I didn't really have nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
I didn't have nothing squared away yet. I'm trying to figure out, I'm meeting with all these banks. I'm trying to do all this. And so I was way too guns blazing up, which caused a huge momentum dip for us.
Yeah.
And so now we kind of hit to the point where people are like, is that building ever going to be done?
Yeah.
So if I would have waited on the announcement, we could have had the building, we could have had everything, and not told anybody anything.
Yeah.
And got everything squared away like we should have and made sure everything. So then whenever we were ready to go, I could come out guns swinging, and it wouldn't have felt like it took so long.
Yeah.
On top of that now, and so that's kind of the things I lesson learned.
Yeah.
You're young. There's things you're going to learn, guys, okay? We were 5 years old at the time.
But that makes sense. Timing is so important. That
timing
makes
is
total
everything.
sense. Yeah.
But now that we're in it, what we're doing is we do monthly updates through video.
Yeah.
We're constantly communicating what we're doing. We're doing serve days out there every week so people get to come out and see it. I've done special little dream team things out there where I've brought in all of our volunteers to kind of do, through stages and rotations to pray over the building, see it. So now we're able to do those things, but it would have been a lot more effective if I would have waited on the announcement and then done all those things within the year of the building instead of the months and months before we ever started construction.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage you to even if you have a building in mind, pull back on the reins a little bit before you start making some announcements unless you got all your T's crossed and your I's dotted and you're ready to move forward in that. And then when you are, update as much. You can't over-communicate about progress.
Yeah.
You can't over-communicate about what you're doing. You can't over-communicate about what's going on because that's what people want. They want the information on where you're going. It's going to help you get that momentum in there.
So talk about those update videos real quick. What does that consist of? Because we've really gotten some good feedback on those, and it's really kept people in the loop. But what do you do?
They're really simple. I mean, they're nothing crazy, but what I do is I look at everything that's been completed from the month prior. And then I go through and I start talking about it. I get a video. They're literally 3 to 5 minutes long.
Yeah.
And they're literally me standing in front of the camera, in front of the building, telling you everything's done. And we're doing little shots of everything that's been completed.
Yeah.
And shots of construction workers working and all the things going on. And then people get to see the progress. So they're nothing crazy, but what you're just doing is figuring out what has been completed in the last month.
Yeah.
And I'm going to film it.
Yeah.
And what was completed in the last month, I'm going to film it. And really just kind of sharing and letting people visually see it come alive and come together. And if you saw our building, you would really see a transformation because it was hideously ugly and horrible. And I don't even know why anybody ever built it that way. Yeah. Sorry to the original builders. And now it is looking gorgeous and pristine and wonderful. And I can't wait to get in there.
That's right. Last and final question.
Okay.
If you are a multi-site church, how do you include the other campus or campuses, or do you include the other campuses? How do you navigate those waters so that there's no jealousy or feeling left out or anything like that?
Here's where I'm probably not the best way to answer this one because I don't know. There's probably people out there smarter than me. I'm trying to keep those separate on the building.
Yeah.
For the simple fact that I would rather the broadcast site celebrate the campus site and really encourage and champion them, but I don't want them to feel like they are the stepchild or they don't get what we get.
That's so good.
Because it's not us, them. We are in this together, but there's phases to it. So we don't really include them in the update videos or anything like that at the portable campus. So the broadcast campus doesn't play those videos at the portable campus. Yeah. But I will say we will at the broadcast campus will celebrate every single time one of our multi-site campuses gets a new building.
Yeah, come on.
Right? Because we are going to champion that and celebrate that. But right now, when you're portable, I'm not going to try to say, hey, we got a building, and So we're working really hard on trying to understand that. Like I said, I'm not. We're new into the whole multi-site thing. This is the approach I've taken because we want to make sure we're not just putting out things that are not pertinent to their location, but we will always celebrate. Yeah. Whenever we start building buildings for all our portable campuses and putting them in locations, we're going to celebrate that. Because this is the building that we're building for the broadcast site. It's building out for video. Yeah. And then we're fully gearing into multi-site from this point on. And there's no need to go anywhere else. We're just going to start plopping and building and expanding and moving and celebrating every time one of our brothers and sisters, man, starts launching those churches and launches those churches. And we get to see that kind of grow and build out that way.
So good. Surviving a new building.
You can survive it. All right, guys. Man, it's been a great week. Again, 50 episodes in. Woo. If you really enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, don't just subscribe. Ring that bell and share this out to anybody that could ever be in this project or going to be in this project, and this can be a benefit to them. And if you want to sponsor us, Equip and CDF, you can come. I'm joking. Guys, I love you. Can't wait to see you back next week. Pray God's peace.